Let's turn those ripe bananas into cake. And this is my chocolate banana caramel crunch cake that has a crispy caramel center with banana cake and iced in a whipped ganache icing. This is how I made it. It's easier than it looks, and let's get started. First, I wanted to use very, very ripe bananas, and I'm using 3 large. Once these 3 large ripe bananas are mashed, it ended up yielding about a cup and a quarter, almost a cup and a half of mashed bananas. But I am going to say that you can use anywhere from a cup to a cup and a half of mashed banana in this recipe. Next, we want to measure out our flour, and we're going to measure out 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour. I am using White Lily all-purpose flour, and we want to sift that. So we're just measuring out our flour. We're going to add it directly to our sifter, and we're going to also add to this all-purpose flour, we want to add 1 teaspoon each of baking powder, baking soda, as well as salt. And then we're going to sift all those dry ingredients together, and we're going to set them to the side and move on to our wet ingredients. So in the bowl of our mixer, we want to add 1 cup of butter, of softened room temperature butter, to our mixing bowl. Make sure you scrape off the excess butter off your wrappers, because that's quite a bit of butter that is left behind. So be sure to get all of your butter. And then to that, we're going to add 2 cups of granulated sugar straight to our mixing bowl. And we want to begin to cream those ingredients together. And once we get those going, to that, we're going to add 1/3 of a cup of vegetable oil. So once you get your sugar and your butter going, go ahead and add in your oil. And you're going to whip that until it's light and fluffy, about 5 to 7 minutes on a medium speed. And then to that, you're going to add about a teaspoon or 2 of vanilla bean paste, or you can use extract if you like, whatever you have. But it should look like this once it's finished, light and fluffy, and almost have doubled in volume. And then we're going to add our eggs. We got 4 room temperature eggs that we want to add in one at a time. Now this is edited, so I do want to say that I did mix well after each addition before adding the next egg. This is 1 cup of room temperature buttermilk. We're going to alternate that with our flour mixture. And so we want to alternate, starting with the dry, and then we're going to drizzle in some of the buttermilk. I ended up adding this buttermilk in 2 additions and the flour in 3 additions, okay? Gradually on a low speed, get all of this mixed in. Now, see here, I'm going to add all of the remaining buttermilk, and then I'll go back in with the remaining flour, and we're going to call it a day. So we're almost done here. Being sure to scrape the bowl during this entire process to make sure everything is well incorporated and well mixed. You don't want any spots of flour or egg or anything in the bottom of your bowl. So once you get all that mixed in, we're going to add our mashed bananas at the end. And this we just need to basically stir in on a low speed and make sure it's thoroughly mixed in, and then we want to stop it. Don't whip this on a high speed when you get to this point. Just basically stir in this on a low speed and get it thoroughly incorporated, and then that's it. You're done. We're going to call it a day from here, and we're going to get ready to add this to 3 8-inch pans that I am prepping with some baking spray. You can use 9-inch pans if that's all you have, but you will need to watch it and cut the baking time. And I am dividing my batter up evenly amongst the 3 pans. These baked in a preheated oven, 350 degrees, for exactly 30 minutes. So again, if you use 9-inch pans, you may want to decrease the baking time. And also, if you use 2 pans instead of 3 pans, you may want to decrease or increase the baking time. So again, you're going to have to watch them. But mine's baked for 30 minutes at 350 degrees. And when it came out the oven, they were nice and golden brown. Here I'm just spreading out the batter, making sure it's even in the pans. This is important when you want to have nice even layers, okay? And so here is the finished product. Like I said, exactly 30 minutes and they were done. You can turn these out after they sat in the pan for about 10 minutes and let them cool for the remaining time. Now I allowed my layers to cool overnight and I wrapped them up and I just had them in the fridge. And so to put this cake together, everything was made the day before. The ganache, the caramel sauce, everything was made day before. This is my ganache, which I heated up in the microwave to thin it out. And I added a layer, a very thin layer to my cake, and then a layer of the caramel sauce. Now the caramel sauce, when it sits overnight, it will get hard. So you're gonna have to reheat it a little bit to make it spreadable. And then when it cools again, it's gonna crisp up, which is where the name crunch from. So once I get all my layers put together, I'm wrapping it in saran wrap and I'm going to place this in the freezer so that the ganache and the caramel will set. Now with the remaining ganache, and this recipe is on my YouTube channel, The Chef and the Baker RVA, I'm gonna whip it up. Now you don't have to whip the ganache if you don't want to. You can use it just as it is to ice your cake. I like to give my ganache a little bit of volume and lighten it up a little bit by whipping it. So that's what it looks like now. I'm gonna fill my piping bag with this whipped ganache. I will pull my cake out of the freezer and I'm going to begin to ice my cake with this. So I'm unwrapping it straight out the freezer. It was only in the freezer for about 10 minutes, let me say that. Just enough to get the fillings to set. And now I'm using my piping bag to apply the ganache to the sides of the cake and to the top, and then I'm gonna smooth everything out. I put 2 layers of this ganache on my cake. So once I got the first layer on, I did go set it back in the freezer for another 5 minutes, and then I would come back and then I would add my second layer of ganache, right? So it's up to you how much you want to use, but I wanted to fully cover my cake. And this is me putting on the second layer of ganache. Now I also use that same ganache for the drip that's on this cake by simply, once I got my second layer of ganache on my cake, I set it back in the freezer for about 5 minutes. I melted a little bit of the ganache, the whipped ganache, just melted it down. Just getting it melted. Don't make it too hot where it's boiling. Just get it melted, and then you want to start to apply that to the cold cake, okay? And that's how you make the drip. I'm just using a spoon, but you can use a piping bag, you can use a squeeze bottle, whatever you're comfortable with using. I get lazy and I'll just use a spoon like you just saw me do. And then I use the remaining whipped ganache to pipe out a border, 2 top borders and 1 bottom border. So you can see that this ganache recipe makes a lot, and that's the final result.